He called her predictable. He called her simple. He called her boring. In the cutthroat world of New York high finance CEO Sebastian Beaumont saw his wife Elara as nothing more than a quiet domestic accessory. He told her to stay home from the biggest gala of the year, a night that could make or break his company, because she wouldn't fit in. But Sebastian is about to learn a brutal lesson. The woman he dismissed is the one who owns his entire world. The boring wife is here, and she's not here to save him. The penthouse smelled of money and disinfectant. Sunlight, cold and unforgiving, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the dust motes dancing over the white marble. It was the only uncontrolled thing in the entire apartment. Elara Beaumont watched them swirl her hand, frozen mid-motion, a simple ceramic mug clutched in her fingers. "Elara, are you even listening to me?" Sebastian's voice cut through the silence. It wasn't loud, but it had an edge, a polished impatience that had become the soundtrack of her marriage. Elara turned. Sebastian was standing by the chrome and glass dining table, knotting a silk Tom Ford tie. He was by any objective measure a handsome man. Dark hair, a sharp jaw, and the kind of restless, predatory energy that Wall Street mistook for genius. He was the CEO of Beaumont Dynamics, a tech logistics firm built on his charm and his father's connections. "I'm listening, Sebastian," she said. Her voice was soft, the one he expected. "The Vanguard Gala. You need the funding from Vance Capital." "I don't need it," he snapped, yanking the tie tighter. "It's a strategic partnership. Vance is the biggest whale in venture capital right now. This investment solidifies our new Asia expansion. It's vital, and that's why." He paused, giving her a slow, dismissive look. "You can't come." Elara's fingers tightened on the mug. "Oh, I wasn't aware I was invited." Sebastian laughed, a short, dry sound. "You weren't. This isn't one of your charity luncheons, darling. This is the big leagues. It's business, real business. You'd be bored. What would you even talk about, your sourdough starter?" He didn't wait for an answer. He strode over, plucked the mug from her hand, and set it down on the counter with a sharp clack. "And for God's sake, Elara, can you not wear that thing?" He gestured to her outfit. A simple, comfortable cashmere sweater in a muted beige paired with dark trousers. It was practical. It was her at-home uniform. "It's comfortable," she said quietly. "It's drab," he countered. "It's what my grandmother would wear, if she were still alive and had given up on life." He adjusted his cufflinks, the bespoke ones with the SB monogram. "I'm bringing Chloe, of course. She's been instrumental in the Vance proposal. She knows the language. She knows how to shine." Chloe Thorne, his vice president of marketing. Sleek, ambitious, and utterly contemptuous of Elara. Chloe, who wore tailored sheath dresses and smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. Chloe, who Sebastian had been working late with for the past 6 months. Elara felt the familiar cold knot tighten in her stomach, but her face remained a perfect, placid mask. This was the bargain she had made. "Wasn't it, I'm sure she will be a great asset," Elara said, moving to pick up his discarded suit jacket from the back of a minimalist chair. She brushed a non-existent piece of lint from the shoulder. "You'll need your briefing notes for the 10 a.m. board call. They're on your desk next to your vitamins." Sebastian grunted, taking the jacket from her. "Right. See, this is what you're good at, Elara. The details, the home front. You keep my life running so I can go out and conquer the world. It's a partnership. He kissed the air somewhere near her cheek. Don't wait up tonight. Chloe and I will be celebrating after we charm E. Vance. He paused at the door, his Maserati keys jingling in his hand. Seriously, though. Burn that sweater. It's depressing. The heavy door of the penthouse clicked shut, echoing in the vast, silent room. Elara stood motionless for a full minute. The silence settled around her, no longer oppressive, but expansive. She closed her eyes, letting the mask of the boring wife dissolve. The slight tremble in her hands stilled. She opened her eyes, and the placid beige-colored emptiness was gone, replaced by a gaze as sharp and cold as the winter light outside. She walked past the gleaming, untouched kitchen, down a hallway lined with abstract art Sebastian had bought because an algorithm told him it was a good investment. She stopped at a plain white door at the far end of the hall. Sebastian thought this was her hobby room, where she did her little online bookkeeping courses. She pressed her thumb to a biometric scanner hidden in the doorframe. With a barely audible hiss, the magnetic lock disengaged. She stepped inside. The room was not beige. It was a command center. 3 monitors glowed with stock tickers, encrypted email clients, and secure video feeds. The wall to her right was a single massive whiteboard covered in complex investment strategies and corporate structures. Elara sat in the high-backed leather chair. She slipped on a pair of noise-cancelling headphones and initiated a secure video call. A moment later, a man's face appeared. He was in his late 60s, with kind eyes and a ruthlessly sharp legal mind. This was Arthur Pendleton, her chief counsel, and the only person on Earth who knew her entire story. "Good morning, Miss Vance," Arthur said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips. "Or is it Mrs. Beaumont right now?" Elara unpinned her simple brown hair, letting it fall to her shoulders. It was, Sebastian had once noted, aggressively normal. "It's Miss Vance from now on, Arthur," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its breathy, accommodating quality. "Sebastian just left. He told me I was too boring to attend the gala tonight." Arthur sighed. "Elara, I have to ask you one last time. Are you absolutely certain about this? We can just decline the proposal. We can short his stock and be done with it. You don't have to go through with this performance." "A performance?" Elara leaned forward. "No, Arthur. This isn't a performance. It's due diligence. I've spent 5 years conducting due diligence on my marriage. Tonight, I'm simply presenting my findings." She tapped a key, bringing up the Beaumont Dynamics file. "He's taking Chloe Thorne as his date. He's planning to charm me." "The man's arrogance is staggering," Arthur muttered. "He's trying to secure a $100 million investment from a woman whose name he can't even be bothered to research because he's too busy mocking his own wife." "His arrogance is his weakness," Elara said. "It's what I counted on when I first met him. It's what's going to make this so effective." She looked at the file, her expression hardening. "Now let's go over the final proposal from Beaumont Dynamics, the one I received. I found some discrepancies, starting with the wire transfers to an unsecured shell corp in the Caymans, the one registered to Chloe Thorne." "Oh dear," Arthur said, though he didn't look surprised. "He's not just an idiot. He's a thief. He's a thief who's about to ask his primary victim for a loan." Elara said, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Get the team ready. Send the Alessia Bianchi gown to my private suite at the St. Regis. And Arthur, yes, Elara, have my security detail meet me at the service entrance. Sebastian is expecting a mouse tonight. Let's give him a dragon. Elara Vance was not born powerful, but she was born patient. Her father, Thomas Vance, had been a brilliant but reclusive software engineer. He'd built an encryption algorithm that became the quiet, unseen backbone of half the world's financial institutions. He lived in a cluttered house in Seattle, drank cheap beer, and cared little for the billions his patent generated. He cared even less for his daughter, whom he'd sent to a modest boarding school after her mother died, and then promptly forgot about. When Thomas Vance died, Elara was 24, working as a quiet research assistant at the New York Public Library. Her father, in a final act of detached pragmatism, left her everything. Not just the money, but the company Vance Cybernetics. Elara, who had spent her life being invisible, suddenly had the means to be anything but. But she'd seen what money did. She'd seen the sycophants, the sharks, the immediate fawning insincerity. She wanted just once to be chosen for herself. So she split her life in two. By day, she was Elara Beaumont. She met Sebastian at a low-key charity auction, one she had funded anonymously. He was charming, ambitious, and saw her as a pretty pliable, old money girl with a small trust fund, just enough to be respectable, not enough to be intimidating. He loved her simplicity. He loved her uncomplicated nature. He loved that she wasn't a threat. They married. She played the part of the perfect, supportive, boring wife. She managed his homes in the Hamptons, and the city organized his social calendar and cultivated the very drabness he now openly mocked. By night in her locked office, she was E. Vance. She had taken her father's company and with Arthur Pendleton's guidance transformed it. She didn't just license the algorithm, she used its profits to build a venture capital empire, Vance Capital. She invested in disruptive tech, green energy, and biomedical research. She was ruthless, intuitive, and most importantly, completely anonymous. She never did photo ops. She never attended galas. Her board meetings were held via secure video link. E. Vance was a phantom, a ghost in the machine of high finance, known only by her terrifying success rate and her first initial. This gala, the Vanguard Gala, was an exception. It was ostensibly to support the New York Innovation Fund, but the true purpose was to announce Vance Capital's new $100 million tech incubator. It would be E. Vance's first ever public appearance, and it just so happened that the man desperate for that incubator's first investment was her own husband. The irony was so sharp, it could cut steel. In her command center, Elara reviewed the numbers. Sebastian wasn't just skimming, he was gutting his own company. The reports he'd sent to his board were fantasies, inflated projections, ghost clients, and accounting errors that all conveniently padded the bottom line. The real books, which Elara's team had hacked in under an hour, showed a company bleeding cash. The money he was siphoning to Chloe's Cayman account wasn't just bonus money. It was the payroll tax. He was robbing his own employees to fund his escape. This changed everything. Her original plan had been simple: attend the gala, reveal herself, decline his proposal, and file for divorce. A clean, devastating break. But this was criminal. This wasn't just a bad husband. It was fraud. "Arthur," she said, her voice clipped. "He's leveraged the entire company against this investment. If we pull out, Beaumont Dynamics collapses. The board will be wiped out, and the employees... He has over 800 employees, Arthur. They'll lose their pensions. His creditors will seize the assets. Arthur confirmed, his face grim. He's used the employee pension fund as collateral for a high-interest bridge loan from a particularly nasty hedge fund, Kratos Global. If he defaults, which he will, when you decline, Kratos will liquidate the company by Monday. Elara's hand clenched. This was the man who complained that his coffee was 2 degrees too cold. The man who had mocked her for suggesting they support a local food bank. He's not just sinking his own ship, he's locked his crew in the brig, she whispered. So what's the play? Arthur asked. We can't in good conscience invest. It's a black hole. But if we don't, 800 people are on the street. Elara looked at the whiteboard. Her mind, usually so quick and decisive, was struggling. This was the conflict. The CEO in her said, "Cut it loose. It's a bad investment. Protect your capital." But the woman she had been the quiet observer, the one who noticed the name of their doorman's sick child, the one Sebastian ignored, that woman recoiled. "No," she said, her decision crystallizing. "We're not investing in him. We're acquiring the company. Right out from under him." Arthur's eyebrows shot up. "That's aggressive. Kratos Global won't let it go cheap." "Kratos doesn't know we have this." Elara tapped the screen, showing the fraud evidence. "Sebastian's loan agreement with them is predicated on his financials being accurate. They are not. He defrauded them too. When they find out, they'll want to dump their position before the SEC freezes the assets. They'll be looking for a quick, quiet exit." "You want me to call Kratos?" Arthur asked, a slow, predatory smile matching her own. "I want you to call them an hour before the gala. Tell them we, Vance Capital, are aware of the fraudulent filings, offer to buy their entire debt position for pennies on the dollar to make their problem. And Sebastian, go away. They'll take it. By the time I walk into that ballroom, Vance Capital won't be a potential investor. We will be the new owners of Beaumont Dynamics." "Elara," Arthur said, his voice full of admiration, "that is terrifyingly brilliant." "It's just good business, Arthur," Elara replied, shutting down the file. "Sebastian always told me I didn't understand his world. It's time I showed him I'm perfectly fluent." She logged off the screens, going dark. She stood up and walked back into the sterile white penthouse. The beige sweater was still on the chair where she'd left it. She picked it up, walked to the kitchen's incinerator chute, and dropped it in. She watched the empty space for a moment, then turned to leave. She had a reservation at the St. Regis. It was time for E. Vance to get ready for her party. Sebastian Beaumont was flying. The 10 a.m. board call had been a masterpiece of tap dancing. He'd dazzled them with buzzwords, synergy, vertical integration, proactive expansion, and glossed over the hard numbers. They were old money dinosaurs. They didn't understand the speed of the new tech world. All they cared about was that the legendary E. Vance was considering them. "She's not just considering us gentlemen," Sebastian had boomed into the speakerphone from his corner office which overlooked Central Park. "She's courting us. The Vanguard Gala tonight. It's essentially a welcoming party. For me." Now he was in his Maserati, speeding toward his downtown tailor for the final fitting of his custom tuxedo. Chloe was on the phone, her voice a purr in his ear. "It went perfectly, Seb," she said. "They're eating out of your hand. Old money is so trusting." "It's not about trust, it's about vision. I have it, they don't." He swerved around a taxi, eliciting an angry honk. "Did you book the reservation at Perse for 9 o'clock? 9 o'clock for 2, the special table." A pause. "What about her?" Sebastian rolled his eyes, even though she couldn't see him. "Elara." "What about her?" "She'll be at home, probably reading a book or alphabetizing the pantry. She's fine. She's happy for me. It's just, she's your wife, Seb. Isn't it a little I don't know obvious that I'm on your arm at the biggest event of the year? It's smart, he corrected her. You're my VP. You did the work on the proposal. It shows a united front. Elara. God love her, she's a sweet girl, but she's not a shark. And tonight we are hunting. Besides, she hates these things. She gets all quiet and just stands there. It's embarrassing. Well, you look amazing, Chloe said. I saw the fabric swatch for your tux. That midnight blue is divine. I'll be in crimson. We'll be the talk of the town. We'll be the talk of Wall Street, Sebastian corrected her. Now I'm heading to the fitting. I'll see you at the St. Regis at 7. Don't be late. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. He glanced at himself in the rearview mirror, flashing a brilliant white smile. He was the king of the world. Tonight, he'd secure the 100 million, and in 6 months, he and Chloe would be on a beach in Monaco. Elara. Well, he'd leave her the penthouse. He wasn't a monster. Miles away in a private wing of the St. Regis that cost more per night than Sebastian's car. Elara's own preparations were underway. There was no beige. There was no drab. The suite was filled with a quiet, focused team. A hairstylist who was usually reserved for A-list actresses, a makeup artist flown in from Paris, and 2 stoic security guards outside the door. Hanging on a mannequin by the window, catching the afternoon light, was the gown. It was not a boring wife dress. It was a custom creation from the Milanese designer Alessia Bianchi. Alessia owed Elara a favor after Vance Capital had quietly saved her fashion house from a hostile takeover. This gown was her thank you. It was made of a liquid emerald green silk that seemed to drink the light and throw it back, altered and more brilliant. It was structured with a sharp architectural bodice that swept off one shoulder and a skirt that fell in a clean, severe line to the floor, pooling in a small, elegant train. It was not a dress for a wallflower. It was armor. "The necklace, Miss Vance," said a quiet assistant, holding open a velvet box. Elara, her hair now styled in a sleek, severe chignon that highlighted her high cheekbones and intelligent eyes, nodded. Inside the box lay the Star of Aegis. It was a legendary piece, a massive, flawless, square-cut diamond, flanked by sapphires on a platinum chain. It was rumored to have belonged to Russian royalty. Vance Capital had acquired it at a private auction 3 months ago. Not as an investment, but as a statement. As the makeup artist applied a final bold slash of red lipstick, a color Sebastian had always told her was too garish for her. Elara felt the last vestiges of Mrs. Beaumont fall away. She had spent 5 years playing small, convincing herself that his casual cruelty was just the price of admission, that the partnership he described was real. She had wanted to be loved for her simple, quiet self. But Sebastian hadn't loved her simple, quiet self. He had used it. He'd seen her quietness not as strength, but as emptiness. Her patience not as a virtue, but as a vacuum he could fill with his own ego. He hadn't loved Elara. He had loved her submission. She stood, and her team helped her into the gown. The cool silk slithered against her skin. As the zipper closed, it felt like a lock clicking into place. She fastened the Star of Aegis around her neck. The weight of it was substantial, cold, and real. She looked in the mirror. The woman looking back was not Sebastian's wife. She was not the woman who alphabetized pantries. She was E. Vance. Her eyes were clear, her jaw was set, and she looked for the first time in 5 years, completely and utterly herself. Her phone buzzed on the vanity. A text from Arthur. "Kratos, deal closed. We are the new majority stakeholder of Beaumont Dynamics. The trap is set. See you on the battlefield." Elara smiled. The red lipstick was perfect. "It's time," she said to her security team. "Let's go to the Gala." The Celestial Hall at the St. Regis was a testament to obscene wealth. 3-story-high ceilings dripped with crystal chandeliers. Waiters in crisp tuxedos floated through the crowd with trays of vintage Dom Perignon, and the low, confident murmur of the global elite filled the air. Sebastian Beaumont arrived at 7:05 p.m. He made an entrance, as he always did. Chloe Thorne was on his arm, a vision, in a skin-tight crimson dress with a slit that went dangerously high. Her black hair was severe, her lipstick dark. They looked like a matched set of very expensive, very dangerous knives. "Sebastian, darling." A society columnist, Deirdre Wall, air-kissed him. "You look like $1 billion, and Chloe stunning. Simply stunning." "We try, Deirdre," Sebastian said, flashing his perfect smile. "Big night for Beaumont Dynamics. Oh, we've all heard E. Vance in the flesh. It's all anyone can talk about. They say she's a complete recluse. Do you know what she looks like? We've been corresponding for months." Sebastian lied smoothly. "Let's just say she's a woman who appreciates results, and Beaumont Dynamics delivers." He spotted his rival Mark Jennings, CEO of a competing logistics firm, standing near the Raw bar. Jennings looked stressed, his suit ill-fitting. He was also vying for the Vance investment. Sebastian steered Chloe in that direction. "Mark, good to see you, old man," Sebastian said, clapping him on the back a little too hard. "Trying to catch the big fish, I wouldn't bother. I hear E. Vance is particular. She doesn't waste time with small fry." Mark Jennings bristled. "We're all here for the same reason, Sebastian. Don't count your chickens." "Oh, but mine are already counted hatched and laying golden eggs," Sebastian retorted, taking a champagne flute. "This is just a formality." Chloe laughed, a tinkling, supportive sound. "Sebastian is being modest. The Vance team was incredibly impressed with our projections." "I'm sure they were," Mark said sourly, looking at Chloe's dress. Just then, Deirdre Wall, the columnist, reappeared this time, with a younger, sharper-looking journalist in tow. "Sebastian, you must meet Camila Romero," Deirdre gushed. "She's doing a big Titans of Tomorrow piece for Forbes. You're a perfect subject." Camila Romero did not look impressed. She looked hungry. Her eyes were sharp, and she held a digital recorder. "Mr. Beaumont, Ms. Thorne, big night for you." "The biggest," Sebastian preened. "It's quite the statement, bringing your VP as your date," Camilla noted, her voice neutral. "Where's your wife tonight?" "Mrs. Beaumont, isn't it, Elara?" Sebastian actually laughed. It was a loud, dismissive braying sound that made several people turn. "Elara? Oh God, no." He leaned in as if sharing a charming conspiracy. "My wife is, well, she's wonderful. Truly. But she's the home and hearth type. You know, simple. Boring in the best possible way. She's happier at home, organizing my sock drawer or whatever it is she does. She wouldn't know what to do with herself here." Chloe smirked into her champagne glass. "She wouldn't fit in." Sebastian concluded, his voice full of mock affection. "It's not her world. Bless her heart." Camila Romero's eyes narrowed. She didn't laugh. She clicked her pen. "I see. So you handle the Shark Tank, and she handles the sock drawer." "Exactly," Sebastian said, pleased. "It's the perfect partnership." "How traditional," Camilla said. Her recorder was still on. "It works for us," Sebastian said, already bored with the topic. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I see the head of the fund. We'll see you after the announcement." He and Chloe swept away a triumphant crimson and midnight blue streak, leaving Camila Romero standing there, a thoughtful, dangerous look on her face. They worked the room for another 20 minutes. Sebastian was at the absolute peak of his arrogance. He was shaking hands, making promises, and accepting congratulations for a deal that hadn't even happened. He felt invincible. At 7:30 p.m., the lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly. A string quartet, which had been playing Vivaldi, came to a halt. The low murmur of the crowd died down. The head of the New York Innovation Fund, a man named Gerald Weston, stepped up to the podium. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the inaugural Vanguard Gala," Gerald began. "We are here to celebrate the future of technology, a future made possible by true visionaries. And tonight we are honored to be in the presence of one of the most visionary and famously private figures in modern finance." Sebastian nudged Chloe, a smug smile on his face. "This is it. Get ready. It is my profound honor," Gerald continued, "to introduce the benefactor of our new incubator, the founder and chief architect of Vance Capital. Ladies and gentlemen, making her first ever public appearance, please welcome Miss E. Vance." A single powerful spotlight hit the grand entrance at the top of the marble staircase. The room was so quiet, you could hear the clink of ice in a distant glass. Sebastian, Chloe, Mark Jennings, and the two journalists all turned their faces expectant, fixed on the top of the stairs. And then she appeared. The woman who stood at the top of the staircase was not a boring wife. She was a queen. The emerald green silk of her gown seemed to hum with its own power. The Star of Aegis necklace at her throat caught the spotlight and shattered it into 1,000 pieces, blinding the onlookers. Her hair was a sleek crown, her makeup was flawless, and her posture was pure, unadulterated power. She paused at the top step, her gaze sweeping over the room. It was not a nervous glance. It was an assessment. The hall was frozen. No one spoke. No one breathed. They were witnessing the unveiling of a myth. In the center of the room, Sebastian Beaumont's smug smile collapsed. His face went slack, his skin turning a sickly pale gray. The champagne flute in his hand tilted, spilling cold liquid over his fingers before he even realized it. "Seb," Chloe whispered, her hand gripping his arm. "Seb, that looks like—" "No," Sebastian whispered. It was a dry, rasping sound. "It's not. It's a coincidence. It's someone who... It's not her." But it was. Elara began her descent. She did not rush. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, one hand lightly on the marble banister. Her eyes found Sebastian in the crowd. She held his gaze. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She simply held it. An executioner looking at the condemned. With every step she took, the fantasy Sebastian had built around himself crumbled. This was not Elara, his drab, simple domestic accessory. This was E. Vance, the most powerful investor in the country. The woman who organized his sock drawer was the same woman who held his entire company, his entire life, in the palm of her hand. The woman he had told to stay home, the woman he had just publicly mocked in front of a Forbes journalist, was the guest of honor. Clack! The sound of Sebastian's champagne flute shattering on the marble floor was deafening in the silence. Every head turned. First to the shattered glass, then to Sebastian's ashen, horrified face, and then finally to the magnificent woman in green who had just reached the bottom of the staircase. Camila Romero, the journalist, was already writing her expression one of stunned, predatory delight. This was no longer a Titans of Tomorrow piece. This was the story of the decade. Gerald Weston, oblivious to the personal drama unfolding, rushed to Elara's side. "Ms. Vance, welcome. We are so honored." "Thank you for having me, Gerald." Elara's voice rang out clear and cold, amplified by the room's acoustics. It was not the soft, mousy voice Sebastian was used to. This was the voice of a boardroom killer. She turned her gaze away from Sebastian as if he were nothing more than a piece of furniture, and addressed the crowd. "Good evening," she said. "Vance Capital has always believed that true innovation doesn't come from noise. It comes from substance. It comes from the quiet, relentless pursuit of a better future." As she spoke, Arthur Pendleton, her lawyer, materialized at her side, along with 2 of her personal security team. They flanked her, forming an impenetrable wall. Sebastian, jolted back to life by the sound of her voice, began to push his way through the crowd. Chloe, her face a mask of terror and confusion, was dragged in his wake. "Elara," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "Elara, what is this? What is this sick, twisted costume? What are you doing?" Elara stopped speaking. She turned very slowly to look at the hand Sebastian had placed on her arm. She raised her eyes to his. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper that only he and Chloe could hear. "You are touching me." Sebastian recoiled as if he'd been burned, snatching his hand back. This isn't possible," he stammered, his eyes wild. You're my wife. You make pot roast." "I am Vance," Elara said, her voice returning to its full, clear volume for the room to hear. "Founder of Vance Capital, and as of an hour ago, the new owner of Beaumont Dynamics." The silence that followed Elara's proclamation was absolute. It was a void, a vacuum that sucked all the air and polite chatter from the celestial hall. Mark Jennings, Sebastian's rival, choked on a shrimp. Deirdre Wall's jaw was on the floor, and Camila Romero was typing so fast into her phone it looked like it might catch fire. Chloe Thorne was the first to break. "You're lying!" she shrieked, her voice high and desperate. "Sebastian, she's lying. This is insane." "Tell them, Seb." Sebastian just stared, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. He was a fish pulled from the water, gasping on the deck. "Lying," Elara repeated, tasting the word. She turned her cold, analytical gaze on the crimson-clad woman. "Miss Thorne, you are the VP of Marketing, correct? Then you should understand what a leveraged buyout is." She nodded to her lawyer. Arthur Pendleton stepped forward, a slim leather folio in his hand. "As of 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." Arthur announced his voice, the calm, reasonable thunder of a senior partner. Vance Capital acquired the full debt portfolio of Beaumont Dynamics from Kratos Global as Mr. Beaumont leveraged the entirety of the company's assets and its pension fund against that debt. His default, which was imminent, has triggered the acquisitions clause. Vance Capital has taken control of the board, effective immediately. Default. What default? Sebastian finally found his voice. The investment. You were the investment. This is a conflict of interest. No, Elara said simply. It was a test. And you failed. She turned back to the stunned crowd. My apologies for the interruption. As I was saying, Vance Capital is looking for substance, which is why my first act as the new head of Beaumont Dynamics will be to correct a Significant error. She looked directly at Chloe. Ms. Thorne, Elara said, your projections for the Asia expansion were fiction. Creative, certainly. But fiction. And the consulting fees routed to your private shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. That's not fiction. That's fraud. Chloe went from crimson to snow white. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't. Elara's voice was laced with ice. Then let me refresh your memory. Arthur handed a single-page printout to one of Elara's security guards. The guard walked calmly over to Chloe and handed it to her. It was a wire transfer receipt. From Beaumont Dynamics to Thorne Consulting LLC, Grand Cayman, dated 2 days ago, for $2.5 million. Chloe looked at the paper, and a small, strangled sound escaped her. She wasn't a shark. She was just a remorer, and her shark was dying. Sebastian, Chloe whimpered, turning to him. Do something. Sebastian, however, was in his own private hell. He was looking at his wife, the woman he'd called boring, just hours ago, and seeing her for the first time. He saw the intelligence he'd mistaken for passivity. He saw the power he'd mistaken for dullness. And he saw the cold, righteous anger he had spent 5 years cultivating. Elara, please, he whispered, a word he hadn't used in his entire marriage. Please don't do this. Not here. We can talk about this. At home. We're married. Home, Elara said. You mean the penthouse that my father's company paid for? You mean the partnership where you mock me to journalists while you steal from your own employees? She gestured to Camila Romero, who was soaking up every word. That's right, Mr. Beaumont. I was standing right behind you at the bar. Bless her heart, I believe you said, the woman who organizes your sock drawer. A collective gasp went through the crowd. This was better than theater. Sebastian, Elara said, her voice final. You didn't just underestimate me. You mistook my patience for permission. You mistook my silence for stupidity. You thought I was your boring wife. She leaned in the star of Aegis, glittering dangerously. I am not your wife. I am your new boss. And your first and final act as CEO of my company will be to escort Miss Thorne out of this building. My security team will assist you. The 2 guards stepped forward. You can't do this, Sebastian roared, his facade of charm finally cracking, revealing the terrified, spoiled man underneath. I built that hair company, it's mine. You built it on lies, Elara countered, and you were about to abandon it. I am saving it. Now get out. You are trespassing. Sebastian looked wildly around the room. All his friends, his colleagues, everyone was staring. No one moved to help him. They looked at him with a mixture of pity-scorn, and from Mark Jennings, undisguised, rapturous glee. Defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken. Sebastian Beaumont turned. The 2 security guards fell in step on either side of him and Chloe. They were not touching them, but their presence was an iron wall. The entire gala watched as the CEO, who had arrived like a king, was marched ignominiously through the crowd, past the raw bar, and out the main doors, his crimson-clad mistress stumbling behind him. The heavy doors of the celestial hall thudded shut. A moment of stunned silence. Then Elara turned back to the podium, a small, satisfied smile on her face. Now, she said to the room at large, my apologies. Let's talk about the future of real innovation. The crowd didn't just applaud, they erupted. The gala ended, but the story was just beginning. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Camila Romero's article for Forbes.com had gone viral. The headline was devastating: CEO mocked boring wife at gala hours before she was revealed as E. Vance, the secret investor who bought his company. The story included Sebastian's exact quotes about the sock drawer and, bless her heart, contrasted with the verbatim transcript of Elara's corporate execution. The stock market, which respects power and detests fraud, reacted instantly. When the market opened, Beaumont Dynamics stock, which Elara had just acquired, shot up 30% on news of new competent leadership. Sebastian, meanwhile, found himself in a world he didn't recognize. When he'd tried to return to the penthouse the night before, his key fob had glowed red. Denied. The doorman, the same one Sebastian had never bothered to learn the name of, had politely informed him that Ms. Vance had restricted all access. Now he was sitting in a sterile downtown coffee shop, staring at his phone, watching his life evaporate. He had 342 missed calls, mostly from angry board members, creditors, and his father. A man in a sharp, dark suit slid into the booth opposite him. It was Arthur Pendleton. "Sebastian," Arthur said, his tone polite. He placed a thick, leather-bound file on the table. "Elara Ms. Vance asked me to deliver these to you personally." "Where is she?" Sebastian rasped. "She can't just do this." "The prenup, I get half." Arthur sighed, as if explaining a complex topic to a very slow child. "Sebastian, you are in a great deal of trouble. So I will be very clear. Let's start with the prenup." He opened the file. "The 2020 prenuptial agreement, which you insisted upon, has a standard infidelity clause. A clause which you, well, chatard would be the operative term. We have receipts from Per Se, the St. Regis, and a jeweler in the Diamond District for one C. Thorne. All paid for with a joint marital account. That alone is enough to void your claim." Sebastian's face paled. "But," Arthur continued, "it gets worse. This," he tapped the file, "is the second document. Divorce papers. Elara has filed on grounds of adultery and fraud. She is not seeking alimony. She is, however, petitioning to have all assets acquired during the marriage, including the Hamptons house and the art collection, returned to her, as they were purchased with funds she can prove were co-mingled from her private premarital accounts. She told me that was a small trust fund. Elara is a very private woman. You mistook her privacy for a lack of resources. A fatal error." Arthur slid a third document across the table. "This, however, is the one you should be most concerned with." Sebastian looked at it. It was a subpoena from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. "The wire transfers to Ms. Thorne's shell company," Arthur explained. "The fraudulent projections you sent to the board, the Kratos Global loan which you secured using your employee's pension fund as collateral that Sebastian is highly illegal. The SEC is freezing your personal assets as of right now." Sebastian's phone vibrated. A bank alert. His checking account had been frozen. "Elara has already met with the new board of Beaumont Dynamics," Arthur said, standing up. "She presented them with two options. Either they cooperate fully with the SEC's investigation into you, or Vance Capital would dissolve the company and sell it for parts. They chose wisely." She's feeding me to the wolves," Sebastian whispered, horrified. "No," Arthur said, buttoning his jacket. "She's just opening the cage. You fed yourself. The fraudulent financials, the affair, the arrogance. Elara didn't do this to you, Sebastian. She just turned on the lights." Sebastian looked down at the papers. He was ruined. He had no company, no money, no wife, and he was likely going to prison. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why did she stay 5 years? Why?" Arthur paused at the end of the booth. "You know, she asked me the same question once. She said she kept hoping you'd see her. The real her. That you'd stop looking past her, and one day just see. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had." He put a $20 bill on the table. "For your coffee. It seems you're a little short on funds." Arthur walked out, leaving Sebastian Beaumont alone in the coffee shop, a titan of tomorrow who had just learned the most brutal lesson of all: never ever underestimate the boring wife. 6 months had passed. The 70th floor corner office, once Sebastian's dark cavern of mahogany narcissism and borrowed prestige, was unrecognizable. The heavy oppressive desk where he had practiced his boardroom king persona was gone, donated to a charity auction. In its place stood a long, sleek table of reclaimed pine and polished steel, a piece that was both beautiful and functional. The walls were no longer covered in abstract art he'd bought as investments. They were smart glass, currently displaying a live, transparent data feed of global shipping routes, green energy efficiency ratings, and cargo manifests. The company itself rebranded from Beaumont Dynamics to the simple, powerful Vance Logistics was breathing clean air for the first time. And in the center of it all, in a chair that valued ergonomic design over intimidation, sat Elara Vance. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue sheath dress and a small, delicate platinum chain. The Star of Aegis was locked in a vault, its purpose as armor now fulfilled. Her hair was down, falling in its natural wave. She looked at peace, focused. She was not the pouring Elara, a ghost in her own home. She was not the avenging angel in emerald silk. This was the woman who had been there all along, the one who built an empire in secret. This was just Elara. The audit had been brutal. Sebastian's genius had been a house of cards built on fraud, nepotism, and robbing his own employees' futures. Elara's first 2 months as owner had been a corporate triage. She fired Sebastian's entire inner circle of yes-men, the ones who had enabled his worst impulses. She fully restored the employee pension fund, a move that cost her 8 figures from her personal accounts, but instantly earned her the fierce, unwavering loyalty of her 800 employees. And she had promoted from within. There was a polite knock on her open door. "Ms. Vance, your 11 o'clock is here." "Thank you, Maria. Send him in." Maria Sanchez. Elara's new chief operating officer smiled and nodded. Maria had been a mid-level analyst in the accounting department for 10 years, repeatedly passed over for promotion by Sebastian, who on the rare occasion he mentioned her, called her that quiet numbers lady. Elara, in her first review of the books, had recognized Maria's brilliance and her neatly kept shadow ledger detailing Sebastian's financial crimes in under an hour. A moment later, Mark Jennings walked in. The former rival CEO looked like a different man. The stress was gone, his ill-fitting suit replaced by a sharp, tailored one. "Elara," he said, shaking her hand warmly. He no longer called her Ms. Vance. "Mark, good to see you. How is our new East Coast consortium?" "Thriving," he said, taking the seat opposite her. "Your buyout of Beaumont? Well, Vance Logistics. Now it was like lancing a boil. You didn't just save this company. You stabilized the entire sector. Our joint shipping lane initiative is already outperforming projections by 15%. He grinned. "Real projections, I mean, not the creative kind." We had good bones, Mark, and good people like Maria, who were just waiting for a chance to do their jobs properly. Sebastian was the only thing holding this place back. Well, to that, Mark raised an imaginary glass. I'm not just here for the logistics report, Elara. He paused, and for the first time, Elara saw the confident CEO replaced by a slightly nervous man. It was a fascinating and frankly endearing sight. Sebastian had never been nervous. His arrogance had been a blunt instrument. Mark was thoughtful. I was wondering, he said, if you... Well, I'm attending a concert at the Lincoln Center on Friday, a performance of Arvo Part's Tabula Rasa. It might be a bit minimalist or boring for some, but I find it structural. Elara finished for him, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. And incredibly peaceful. I know his work. It's brilliant. Mark's face lit up with surprise and pleasure. You do? That's fantastic. I was wondering if you would like to join me. Just as Mark. Not as a CEO. Elara let the request settle. He had used the word boring, not as a mockery, but as a small, vulnerable confession of his own genuine taste, worried she might find it lacking. He was treating her not as a mythical investor or a wallflower, but as a person. He was asking, not assuming. Mark, she said, her voice warm. I would like that very much. He beamed, finalized their plans, and left the office with a new spring in his step. After he was gone, Elara looked down at a file on her desk. It was the final report from her legal team, closing the loop on the divorce and the SEC investigation. The final accounting was complete. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence, the wire transfers, Maria's shadow ledger, and Chloe's full panicked confession, Sebastian had taken a plea deal. He was currently serving a 24-month sentence in a low-security federal prison for wire fraud and embezzlement from the pension fund. Chloe, having testified against him, received 5 years probation, full financial restitution, and a permanent ban from the financial industry. The last Elara had heard, she was a shift manager at a cosmetics counter, her crimson dresses and Cayman accounts a distant memory. Elara felt no surge of triumph. Not anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences. A balanced ledger. She closed the file. It was done. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text message. It was from Camila Romero, the Forbes journalist. They had developed a friendship over the past few months built on a mutual respect for a well-executed plan. The text read, "Got a hot tip from a source inside FCI Otisville. Your ex has a new title, kitchen staff. Sources say he's in charge of pot roast." Elara stared at the text. Pot roast, the meal she used to make that he'd called pedestrian. The irony was so perfect, so utterly mundane, it was hilarious. A small chuckle escaped her. Then another. Then for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Elara Vance leaned back in her chair in her sunlit office, surrounded by the Emma she had built and reclaimed, and laughed. It was not the laugh of a vengeful wife or a ruthless CEO. It was the free, unrestrained and joyful sound of a woman who was at long last completely and utterly herself. And that's the end of Elara's story, but it's the beginning of her new life. She didn't just get revenge. She got her life back. She exposed a fraud, saved a company, and protected 800 jobs, all while taking out the trash. Elara's story is a powerful reminder that the people who are overlooked, the ones called quiet or simple, are often the ones with the most strength biding their time. The world is full of Sebastians who mistake kindness for weakness. But karma, as Ilara proved, always has a plan. What did you think of Ilara's reveal? Was it the perfect payback? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. Your support is everything to this channel. So please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a good karma story, and definitely hit that subscribe button. Thank you for listening. They say every marriage has its secrets, some small enough to slip under the radar, others large enough to crack the very foundations of trust. But what if the secret is discovered in the most unforgiving spotlight of all, a crowded upscale restaurant? And what if, at the exact moment, a wife learns about her husband's betrayal? She's carrying his child, unsure whether to expose him, protect him, or destroy everything in one impulsive move. This story follows the meteoric rise and catastrophic fall of Derek Harrington, a man who had it all until one dinner turned his world into a firestorm of scandal and investigation. Derek Harrington had always exuded a confidence that verged on arrogance. He was the type of man people noticed in a room, tall, well-groomed, with an intense gaze that made you think he saw your secrets before you even decided to trust him. At 37, he was already heading one of the fastest-growing private tech investment firms in the country, Harrington Ventures, nestled in the heart of New York City. Many had whispered comparisons. He could be the next Elon Musk, or he's aiming to dethrone Bill Gates in philanthropic efforts. Of course, those comparisons were mostly hot air in the media, but Derek ate them up like candy and fueled his ambition further. He had grown up in a modest home in Syracuse, New York, the son of a middle school teacher and an unemployed mechanic. Derek swore to himself at a young age that he would never again know the taste of poverty and uncertainty. If there was a mountain, he would climb it. If there was a competitor, he would annihilate them, or better yet, buy them out. Ever since his first big deal, a startup buyout that netted him a cool $20 million by the age of 26, Derek became addicted to the thrill of high-stakes ventures. His wife, Catherine Harrington, was the silent strength behind him. Once Catherine Barnes, she had come from an entirely different world, an only child raised in Connecticut by a wealthy yet tight-knit family who adored her. Catherine's father, Alexander Barnes, had a small but respectable real estate firm that catered to elite clients. Catherine had an aura of class that Derek desperately needed. Although he was confident in boardrooms and pitch meetings, he often floundered in high society's intricacies. Catherine taught him how to navigate those elite circles with charm and grace. For the past 6 years, their marriage had been a blend of love, shared ambition, and occasional tension, particularly since Derek began pouring all his time into Harrington Ventures. Catherine had repeatedly asked for a child, a family. Derek always said, soon pushing it down his list of priorities. But finally, to Catherine's breathless joy, she became pregnant. Derek, for his part, seemed excited, though many nights he would return home after midnight, exhausted, complaining about client dinners or late-night strategy sessions. Still, Catherine believed in him. She believed in his vision, in his ability to provide not just for her, but for their soon-to-arrive child. Even if love had cooled into routine, she trusted Derek would protect their family. She had no idea her entire life would be thrown upside down by one small choice, deciding to meet an old friend for dinner in the heart of Manhattan. Catherine had not planned to be at the upscale restaurant Aux Merveilles that particular night. She was 8 months pregnant and feeling more fatigued than usual. But her college friend, Melanie Carter, was passing through New York for the first time in years, and insisted on seeing her. To Catherine, it felt like an unexpected gift, an escape from waiting at home alone for Derek to walk through the door at some unknown hour. Melanie had chosen Aux Merveilles because she'd read about it in a luxury travel magazine. The interior glimmered with crystal chandeliers, and each table was separated by translucent screens that glowed with soft amber light. The gentle hum of hushed conversations filled the air, occasionally interrupted by the clink of expensive dinnerware. Catherine arrived early, leaning on the hostess stand for a moment to steady herself. A sympathetic staff member immediately guided her to a plush velvet seat and offered a glass of water. She felt a bit out of place in her maternity dress, noting the swirl of elegant women in cocktail dresses and men in tailored suits. But she brushed off the discomfort. She was here to see her friend, not to impress the Manhattan elite. While waiting for Melanie, Catherine decided to freshen up in the restroom. On her way back, something caught her attention through the filmy screen of a private dining area. At first, she had no idea why her gaze lingered there. She could see a man's silhouette, tall and commanding, and across from him sat a slim figure with flowing dark hair. Catherine's heart twitched. The tilt of the man's head, the way he gestured with his hand that was Derek's mannerism. But it couldn't be. Derek had told her he was in an urgent meeting on the other side of town. Her heart pounding. Catherine took careful steps toward the screen, making sure to stay hidden behind the plush drapery that separated the main dining area from the private alcoves. A waiter passed by, but she quickly turned away, pretending to examine a painting on the wall until he was gone. Then she returned her gaze to the table. Yes. It was Derek. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, the kind he wore for special private events. And he wasn't dining with a business associate. His companion was a woman with an air of cold, dazzling beauty. Catherine didn't recognize her immediately. Maybe she was a client. But then she noticed the way the woman's hand stretched across the table to rest on Derek's fingers, a gesture far too intimate for a business meeting. Catherine's stomach churned. She felt dizzy. She almost rushed forward to confront him, but some primal sense of caution rooted her to the spot. She wasn't prepared for a scene. She didn't know if she was strong enough to face the answers to the burning questions swirling in her mind. So she watched. Derek leaned in, and the woman did the same, her glossy black hair falling forward to frame her face. Catherine could make out the name Sabrina Chen from the conversation. They chuckled softly, and Derek brushed a strand of the woman's hair back behind her ear. Catherine's hands shook tears threatening to flood her eyes. She pressed herself against the wall. She needed to get out of there, needed to breathe. She turned and hurried away, nearly running into a startled Melanie who was just arriving. Melanie took one look at Catherine's pale face, then glanced curiously at the private alcove. "Are you okay?" she asked, hands gripping Catherine's arms gently. "My goodness, you look like you've seen a ghost." In a strangled voice, Catherine replied, "I'm not feeling well, Mel. Can we go somewhere else?" Melanie, always sensitive, nodded without question. She guided Catherine outside, hailed a taxi, and insisted they go back to Catherine's penthouse so she could rest. Catherine murmured something about not wanting to be alone, about needing to talk. Once in the taxi, she told Melanie everything that Derek was there with another woman, clearly more than a business associate. Her friend listened, anger flaming in her eyes. "You need to confront him," Melanie said. "He can't get away with this, especially now when you're about to have his child." But Catherine felt paralyzed. Her mind spun with a million scenarios, none of them good. She wanted the safety of denial, to pretend she didn't witness the betrayal. But she also wanted the raw truth. By the time they reached her penthouse, she had made a decision she would wait for Derek to come home. He would have to look her in the eye and explain. Night stretched on with excruciating slowness. Melanie offered to stay, but Catherine insisted she'd manage. She needed to confront her husband alone. So Melanie left with repeated promises that Catherine call her for any reason, day or night. The apartment felt cavernous once Catherine was alone. Her baby kicked inside her as if sensing her mother's distress. Sometime near midnight, Catherine dozed off on the living room couch, still in her maternity dress and heels, phone clutched in her trembling hand. She awoke to the click of the front door. Derek stepped in laptop bag over his shoulder tie, slightly loosened. He paused when he saw her lying on the couch in the dim light. "You're still awake?" he asked, crossing the room to place a kiss on her forehead. His breath smelled faintly of wine. Catherine recoiled, the sting of his betrayal fresh in her mind. She struggled to compose herself, but emotion burst forth. "Where were you?" Derek froze, obviously caught off guard by her accusatory tone. "I told you I had a meeting." "Don't lie," Catherine shouted. "I saw you, Derek. I saw you at Aux Merveilles with some woman named Sabrina Chen. You were touching her hair." She choked on the words, tears forming again. Derek's face went pale, then hardened with defiance. "You were spying on me." "Catherine, what were you doing there? Having dinner with a friend," she shot back. "But that's not the point. Don't try to twist this around. Just tell me the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "She's just a client. Nothing more. The hair thing, it was just a friendly gesture. You know how these international investors can be. They appreciate closeness, personal connections. She's considering a large investment in Harrington Ventures." Catherine stared at him, heart twisting with disbelief. "I'm not a child, Derek. I know what I saw. That was no casual client dinner." He let out a breath, lips pressed together. "Okay. We're close. But it's complicated. Sabrina has connections with major stakeholders in Asia. She expects a certain rapport. If I don't keep her happy, we could lose a multi-million-dollar deal. So you're sleeping with her to make her invest." Catherine's voice trembled with fury and despair. "It's not that simple," Derek said, but he didn't deny it. "This is business, Catherine. And it's not... it's not what you think. Yes, she's flirtatious. Maybe I crossed a line, but it's for the company, for our future." Catherine stood, a surge of anger giving her strength, even in her pregnant state. "Our future, our child's future. This is how you plan to secure it, by betraying me." Derek's eyes flickered with guilt. But then he hardened again. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Harrington Ventures is on the verge of a major breakthrough. A single large investment could catapult us into the realm of industry giants. I can't afford to let moral qualms hold me back." Catherine felt as if the floor were dropping out from beneath her. She recognized Derek's ambition had always been borderline obsessive. But hearing him admit he'd compromise their marriage, the very sanctity of their relationship just for a deal, she had no words. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her, mingled with heartbreak. "Get out," she finally managed, voice weak yet resolute. "Catherine," he started. She turned away. "Sleep in the guest room. I can't even look at you right now." He opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. Silent, he retreated to the guest bedroom, leaving Catherine to collapse onto the couch in tears. As she drifted in a half-conscious state of heartbreak, a single question throbbed in her mind. How could he do this to us? Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, stirring Catherine from a fitful sleep. She sat up, her body aching from the night spent on the couch. She half expected Derek to appear with an apology or at least an explanation better than it's for the deal. But the apartment was silent. A check of the guest room revealed he was gone. No note, no text. Only the faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. Catherine felt bitterness coil inside her like a snake. Had he left for work as though nothing had happened? Trying to compose herself, she went about her morning routine, feeding their fluffy grey cat Winston, who circled her legs anxiously, making a cup of tea, gazing out at the city skyline. But none of it soothed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melanie. She simply texted, "I'm here for you," followed by a heart emoji. Catherine typed a quick thanks and debated what to do next. Should she confront Derek at his office? Should she call her father? Confide in him? Then as she paced through the living room, the TV caught her attention. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom, and the anchor's solemn voice filled the silence. Ongoing investigation into potential insider trading and financial misconduct at Harrington Ventures. Derek Harrington's office has not yet released a statement, but sources say officials from the SEC are looking into suspicious activity. Catherine fumbled for the remote and turned up the volume. Her heart pounded with alarm. Investigation insider trading. This was the first she'd heard of anything official. The anchor went on. Harrington Ventures soared to prominence in the last few years, drawing comparisons to major tech moguls like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. But now regulators question whether certain investment gains came from illicitly obtained information. Derek Harrington was spotted at a private dinner last night with an unidentified associate, leading to speculation on whether this meeting is connected to the alleged misconduct. In that moment, Catherine felt a strange mixture of shock and vindication. She remembered the hush of Oxmervale, the private table Derek's murmured conversation with Sabrina Chen. Was this the reason for that meeting? She grabbed her phone and scrolled through financial news sites. All of them were erupting with the story. Harrington Ventures under siege. One headline read, "Inside the SEC probe teased another." She found nothing that concretely linked Sabrina Chen to the scandal, only rumors that Derek was meeting with someone who might hold the key to hush money or secret deals. Anxiety clawed at Catherine's stomach. This was beyond a marital betrayal. It might be a legal catastrophe. She needed answers. She dialed Derek's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Her next thought was to contact his assistant, the ever-efficient Amanda Wu, who always picked up or responded promptly. But even Amanda's phone rang until voicemail kicked in. Fearing the worst, Catherine decided to put aside her heartbreak for a moment and do what she could to protect her family. She reached for her coat and bag, then headed out the door, determined to confront Derek at his office if necessary. The offices of Harrington Ventures occupied the 20th through 22nd floors of a gleaming steel and glass tower in Midtown. When Catherine arrived, the usual bustle in the lobby was replaced by a tense hush. Small clusters of employees whispered, casting anxious glances toward a row of men in dark suits who were busy rifling through documents and laptops. It was clear the investigation was well underway. Catherine stepped off the elevator on the 22nd floor, where Derek's corner office overlooked the city. She braced herself for the sight of more investigators. Instead, she found the reception area swarming with them. She approached a stern-faced man, flipping through files. "Excuse me, I'm Catherine Harrington. I need to see my husband." He regarded her warily. "Do you have an appointment?" She almost laughed at the absurdity. "Appointment, I'm his wife. Is Derek in his office?" The man jerked his head toward a closed door. He's in a meeting with the SEC officials and his legal team. Best if you wait. Catherine felt her patience slip. I'm not waiting, she said firmly. Without another glance, she marched to Derek's office door and turned the handle. Locked. She knocked, ignoring the mutterings of the investigators behind her. After an agonizing minute, the door swung open, revealing Derek's lawyer. A slim woman in a sharp navy suit, a phone pressed to her ear. She looked Catherine up and down. Mrs. Harrington. We're in the middle of something. Derek's voice cut through. Let her in. The lawyer stepped aside, and Catherine entered the office. Derek stood at his desk, arms folded, face drawn and tired. Two men in dark suits sat in chairs across from him, notes scattered on the table. They regarded Catherine neutrally before turning back to Derek. We'll give you a moment, one of the men said, as they gathered up their documents and stepped out. An awkward hush fell. Catherine closed the door behind them. For a heartbeat, she and Derek just stared at each other, the memory of last night's argument hanging between them. His eyes flickered with guilt concern, and something else, maybe relief. Catherine. He began running a hand over his face. I was going to call you once this settled. Her anger reignited at his dismissive tone. Settled, Derek. You're under investigation by the SEC. This isn't a small pothole in the road. The news is everywhere. He sighed. Look, I can't say much right now. It's an internal matter, and our lawyers say we should cooperate, but keep quiet publicly. There have been rumors of insider trading, but it's a misunderstanding. We're sorting it out. A misunderstanding, Catherine repeated. Does this have anything to do with Sabrina Chen and last night's dinner? Derek flinched at the name. Why would you think? Because the news outlets are already speculating about it. Derek, she hissed. If you were with her to discuss some insider deal. Stop, he cut in, raising a hand. I can't talk about her. Not here, not now. Let's just say I have things under control. Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Under control? Derek, the entire office is crawling with investigators. I can't even reach your assistant. Amanda was told not to talk to anyone without the lawyers present, Derek said tightly. She's in a conference room with them now. This is standard procedure. Standard procedure, Catherine echoed, her voice faint with incredulity. How far does this go, Derek? Because if you think I'm going to sit at home pregnant while you're possibly facing criminal charges, I didn't do anything illegal, he snapped, though sweat beaded at his temple. Sabrina, it's complicated. She brought me some stock tips about a company we were considering investing in. She claimed she had reliable leads. You used them. Catherine pressed her heart, pounding. He swallowed. Not exactly. I just moved some assets around. I didn't know it would be considered insider information. She told me it was her own research, that it was legit. I never expected the SEC to come knocking. Catherine's mind reeled. So he had used Sabrina's tips, likely crossing a line into illegal territory. She stared at him, struggling to reconcile the charismatic man she fell in love with, the father of her unborn child, with this desperate figure in front of her. Finally, she said, "What do you want from me?" Derek. He looked pained. I need you to trust me. I'm meeting with Sabrina this afternoon to clarify things. She owes me an explanation. If she fed me illegal tips, it's on her. My lawyers can argue that I was deceived. Catherine's breath caught. You're meeting her again. After last night. It's business, he insisted. Look, I get how bad this looks, but if you want to protect our family, you'll let me handle this. I promise I'll fix it. Part of Catherine wanted to cling to the hope that he could, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, the guilt and confusion swirling there. His ambition, once so inspiring, had turned into a reckless obsession that might cost him everything. Maybe she should walk away, call her father, pack a bag and leave. But she couldn't, at least not yet. She carried his child, and some piece of her still loved him. She nodded once. Fine. But I'm not leaving you alone in this. I'm staying in the city. I'll do what I can to help. Derek exhaled relief passing over his face. He reached for her hands, but she stepped back. I'll trust you for now, she said, voice trembling. But remember, Derek, trust isn't infinite. You've already broken it once. That afternoon, Catherine found herself restless, pacing the penthouse. The SEC had allowed Derek to remain at the office, but insisted he provide any requested documents on demand. His phone was undoubtedly monitored, and Sabrina Chen was labeled a person of interest. Catherine tried to focus on calm. She set up a quiet corner to rest, turned on soft classical music, and attempted to soothe the baby within her. Yet every time she shut her eyes, she saw Derek leaning across that table, saw him gently touching Sabrina's hair. How did we get here? She wondered. Have I been so naive? A phone call from an unfamiliar number broke her reverie. She picked up, heart hammering. A woman's voice spoke clipped and professional. Hello, Mrs. Harrington. My name is Caroline Patterson. I'm a journalist at the New York Daily Mirror. We're working on a story about your husband's company. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Catherine's mouth went dry. No comment, she said hastily, ending the call. But within minutes, another call came from yet another journalist. And then another. It seemed the entire press corps had decided to ring her up in search of a sensational quote. She turned off her phone, trembling with anxiety. The day crawled by. When Derek finally returned home, it was well past 8. Catherine opened the door to find him grim-faced, tie, undone hair disheveled. He looked like a man fighting a war on multiple fronts. Any progress? Catherine asked quietly. He nodded. Lawyers say there's no direct evidence yet. Just allegations that we traded on insider info for a few deals. But they'll keep digging. As for Sabrina... He paused, looking away. We spoke. She claims she's just a scapegoat. She said she's taking a flight back to Hong Kong tomorrow, and that the SEC can't touch her there. Catherine's stomach twisted. So she's running. He shrugged. Or, so she says. I tried to get her to talk to my lawyers, but she refused. She's not answering calls anymore. My attorneys are furious. They say if she disappears, it'll make me look even worse, like we're trying to hide something. Catherine eyed him. Are you still sleeping with her? Derek's cheeks burned red. No. Catherine, I messed up. Okay. I let things get too close, but it was never serious. Not on my end. She wanted to believe him, but suspicion dug its claws into her mind. Is that the truth, or just what you need me to believe? He hesitated. I'm not lying to you. Look, I promise you my relationship with Sabrina was purely for business connections. Maybe it crossed lines, but I never intended to leave you. Or... She shook her head, tears threatening again. How noble, she whispered sarcastically. Derek, I can't keep doing this. I can't watch you destroy yourself and our marriage in this pursuit of power. He reached for her, his hand trembling. For the first time she sensed he was truly afraid. "Catherine, if we can get past this, I'll change. I'll make it right. Just stand by me, please." Looking into his eyes, she saw remnants of the man she'd married, the one who had once had dreams of giving them a beautiful life. Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a moment, broken but together. By the next morning, Catherine felt an urgent need for counsel. She made a phone call to someone she knew and trusted her father, Alexander Barnes. Despite their somewhat strained relationship, he had never fully approved of Derek's rags to riches aggression. Her father was a steady presence in her life. "Dad," she said quietly when he picked up. "Things are bad. Derek's company is under investigation. There's rumors of insider trading." She heard him exhale. "I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I don't know," she confessed. "He might have been unfaithful too. I feel like everything is spiraling." Her father's voice softened. "Sweetheart, you need to take care of yourself. Think about my grandchild. Stress can't be good for the baby." She stifled a sob. "I know. Dad, what should I do? Should I leave him?" Alexander was silent for a moment. "I can't decide that for you. But listen, Catherine Derek has always been a risk-taker. That's what made him successful. But it can also lead to ruin if he isn't careful. You have to consider if you can trust him to change. And if not..." She closed her eyes. "I understand." He cleared his throat. "If you need a place to stay, come home. Your old room is waiting, or I can set you up in a nearby property. No pressure. But I won't let you face this alone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she felt a measure of warmth. "Thank you, Dad. I'll let you know." After the call ended, Catherine sat by the window, watching the Manhattan skyline shimmer under the morning sun. Memories danced in her mind. Meeting Derek at a charity gala, her father hosted the spark in his eyes as he talked about turning dreams into reality, the sweet way he'd slipped a note into her coat pocket with an invitation for a first date. Where had that man gone? Meanwhile, Derek's day took a dramatic turn. He was set to appear for a voluntary discussion at the SEC offices downtown. His lawyers insisted that showing openness would help. But an hour before he was supposed to leave, a text from an unknown number arrived. "Meet me at the Park Regency Hotel room, T02. Urgent. Sabrina." His heart pounded. Why would Sabrina risk contacting him now, especially if she was supposedly leaving the country? He showed the text to his head lawyer, Edward Langley, who frowned. "That's ill-advised. She's already under suspicion." Derek frowned. "But if she has evidence to exonerate me or some angle we can use, it could save the company." Langley shook his head. "We can't stop you from going, but this is dangerous. If the SEC finds out, they might interpret it as conspiracy. You should consider letting me or one of the associates go with you." But Derek shook his head. "She might not talk if there's a lawyer present. I'll go alone, but I'll record everything." Langley frowned more deeply. "Just be careful. And whatever you do, don't offer her money or anything that can be interpreted as bribery." Derek nodded grimly. He texted Sabrina back. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Then he instructed his driver to head to the Park Regency. Anxiety prickled his skin as he imagined the worst: a sting operation, a setup by the SEC, or even blackmail from Sabrina herself. When he arrived at room 1902, he found the door slightly ajar. He knocked softly, hearing the faint sound of classical music from inside. Sabrina's voice called out, "Come in." He stepped into the suite, scanning the opulent living area. Marble floors, plush sofas, fresh roses on the coffee table. Sabrina stood by a window wearing a sleek black dress. She looked impeccable every inch, the mysterious femme fatale. Her gaze locked on Derek. "Don't be shy," she said with a purr. "We don't have much time." Derek hesitated by the door. "Why did you call me here?" She beckoned him over. As he stepped forward, she gestured for him to sit on the sofa. He remained standing. "I'm not staying long." "Talk." Sabrina smiled, though tension radiated off her. "I'm leaving for Hong Kong in a few hours. I just wanted to mend things between us." "I never meant for you to get in trouble." He shook his head, anger flaring. "You handed me illegal tips. That's exactly how I got in trouble." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't pretend you didn't know the risks, Derek. You're a smart man. No one invests millions blindly. You could have done your own diligence, but you were too eager." He opened his mouth to retort, but she continued. "Anyway, let's not argue about the past. I have a proposition. I can provide documentation that proves I misled you, that I told you it was my own research, and you relied on it in good faith. If the SEC sees that you could walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist." Derek's heart skipped. "So you'll confess to lying?" She shrugged, a coy smile on her lips. "I'll say whatever you need me to say, for the right price." He clenched his jaw. "What price?" She sauntered to a small table and picked up a folder. "I have it all here, emails, transcripts. It's quite convincing. I want $5 million. Derek nearly choked. $5 million? Sabrina. That's blackmail. Her lips curled. Call it compensation. I'll be ostracized from my circles. I can't do business with you or your connections again. I'll have to rebuild from scratch. Derek's mind spun. $5 million was no small amount, but his company was worth hundreds of millions. If the investigation destroyed it, he could lose everything. Still, even if paying Sabrina might clear him, it was absolutely illegal to bribe a witness. This could bury him deeper in legal trouble. He took a step back, shaking his head. I can't do that. My lawyers would kill me. She rolled her eyes. Your lawyers, Derek. You won't need them if you're indicted. You'll be lucky to avoid jail. He stared at her, fury boiling. So this was your plan all along? To reel me in, feed me these tips and then blackmail me? Sabrina's eyes flashed. Don't be naive. You pursued me for my connections. We used each other. Now let's finish the transaction. He exhaled, attempting to steady himself. I won't pay you a cent. If you have evidence that can help me, provide it. If not, get out of my way. Her expression hardened. Think carefully, Derek. You have a lot to lose. He turned to the door. I'm done with you. As he left, his heart pounded not just with anger, but with fear. Fear that Sabrina might release evidence that would incriminate him further, or worse, twist the facts to frame him entirely. The upcoming meeting at the SEC loomed large in his mind. Back at the Harrington Ventures office, Derek quickly informed Langley of what had transpired. The lawyer's face turned pale. She asked for money. Derek, if we even hint at paying her, it could be seen as witness tampering. We have to disclose this to the SEC, or they might discover it later, and accuse us of hiding it." Derek groaned. "You're right. Let's get it over with." The two hurried to the SEC building where they were ushered into a conference room. Catherine, who'd insisted on coming along for moral support, sat quietly in the corner. She offered Derek a small nod of encouragement. Despite everything, she was there for him. The lead investigator, a meticulous woman named Francesca Morales, greeted them with cool politeness. "Mr. Harrington, we appreciate your cooperation. We have a few questions." Langley gave a tight smile. "We want to go on record that Ms. Sabrina Chen attempted to solicit money in exchange for certain statements. We did not comply." Morales leaned forward, interest piqued. "That's quite an allegation. Do you have proof?" Derek remembered that he had switched on his phone's recording as soon as Sabrina started talking. He glanced at Langley, who nodded. They handed over the audio file. It was risky, but they had no choice. If Sabrina tried to sell a false narrative, at least they had evidence she'd demanded money. Morales listened with headphones, her stern face revealing little reaction. Finally, she removed the headphones. "We'll need to verify the authenticity of this recording. For now, it appears Ms. Chen may have engaged in blackmail." She then fixed Derek with a penetrating gaze. "But that doesn't absolve you, Mr. Harrington. Regardless of Ms. Chen's motives, if you used insider information knowingly or not, you remain accountable." Derek swallowed. "I understand." The interrogation began, and it felt like a slow, agonizing dance. Morales asked about each investment, each conversation with Sabrina, each trade made in the weeks prior. Derek tried to remain calm, giving honest answers, but stopping whenever Langley advised him to. At times, Catherine interjected small clarifications, like how Derek spent nights working on legitimate research, how he had never shown awareness of wrongdoing. Morales took notes meticulously. Finally, after hours, they were dismissed. Langley told them it might take weeks for the SEC to decide whether to press charges, but at least they hadn't been arrested. Catherine managed a small sigh of relief, but Derek's expression was still grim. "This is far from over," he muttered. News of the SEC meeting spread quickly through financial circles. Rumors persisted that Sabrina Chen had fled the country. The press speculated wildly. Did the pregnant wife know, secret mistress at center of scandal billionaire, playboy, or savvy businessman? Each headline more lurid than the last. Investors began pulling out. Harrington Ventures' stock, though private, was partially linked to a public affiliate, and its share price dropped precipitously in after-hours trading. Derek scrambled to reassure stakeholders. He wrote emails, made phone calls, pleaded for patience. Some listened, others distanced themselves. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss damage control. Catherine watched the meltdown with growing horror. She wanted to stand by Derek, but each day more revelations emerged about how close he and Sabrina had been. Photos surfaced of them at charity galas, at private dinners, looking more intimate than Derek had admitted. The press ran with the story, painting a picture of a torrid affair. Catherine felt herself roiling with a mix of jealousy, betrayal, and lingering love. One night, Derek returned home, late, throwing his keys on the kitchen counter in frustration. "We lost another investor. The board is furious." Catherine, who had been restless all evening, approached him tentatively. "You need a strong public statement," she suggested. "Something that clarifies everything from the insider trading allegations to your relationship with Sabrina." He slammed his fist on the counter. "I can't talk about the investigation publicly, Catherine. The lawyers forbid it. And as for Sabrina, I'd just be fueling the tabloid fire. She tried to maintain composure. So you do nothing? His face twisted with exhaustion. Yes, for now. We do nothing. The lawyers say we need to wait until the SEC finishes their inquiry. Then we can mount a defense. Catherine nodded numbly. She felt shut out. Every day the tension in the penthouse grew heavier, as if invisible walls were closing in. And Derek seemed to alternate between frantic action and stony silence, leaving Catherine alone in her swirling thoughts. A few days later, Catherine's father showed up unannounced at the penthouse. Derek had gone to the office. She welcomed Alexander in offering him tea. He studied her face, concern etched in his expression. You look exhausted, he said. I can't sleep, Catherine admitted. I keep replaying everything in my head. Alexander placed a comforting hand on hers. Come home with me, at least for a while, to clear your head. Give Derek space to sort this out. She hesitated, torn. I don't want to abandon him. Alexander sighed. You wouldn't be abandoning him, dear. But you're pregnant, stressed, and it's not healthy. You need calm surroundings, not SEC investigators and salacious tabloids. Catherine thought of the baby, the life growing inside her. She felt a pang of guilt. She was so consumed by Derek's crisis, she barely paused to consider her own well-being. After a long moment, she nodded. You're right. Let me pack a bag. If Derek wants to talk, he knows how to reach me. Within an hour, she was in her father's car, heading toward the tranquility of Connecticut. She left a short note for Derek. I'm going to Dad's for a few days to rest. I hope you understand. She didn't expect an immediate response, and she got none. Days turned into a week. Catherine settled into a guest suite at her father's estate, where the staff fussed over her, ensuring she had healthy meals and plenty of rest. She felt her body relax bit by bit, though her heart still weighed heavy. She kept an eye on the news. Harrington Ventures seemed to be on the brink. More rumors of a mass investor exodus, talk of a possible resignation by Derek if indicted. Then one afternoon, Catherine received a call from an unexpected source, Amanda Wu, Derek's assistant. Amanda's voice trembled with urgency. Mrs. Harrington, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you should know. Catherine gripped the phone. What is it? A man came by the office, Kyle Peterson, one of Derek's old associates. He claimed to have documents that could prove Derek's innocence. But Derek is so busy fighting fires, he barely gave Kyle the time of day. Kyle said he discovered that Sabrina Chen had conspired with another firm to sabotage Harrington Ventures. He said it was personal for her. She wanted to ruin Derek. Something about an old family feud. Catherine's pulse raced. Wait, an old family feud? Sabrina never mentioned anything like that. I don't have details, Amanda said. But Kyle swore he has proof. Sabrina manipulated data to make it look like Derek was trading on insider info, when in fact it was all her doing. He tried emailing Derek, but with the SEC monitor it might get lost. I think Derek's ignoring him because it sounds too far-fetched. But Kyle seems genuine. Catherine thought back to Sabrina's chilling composure, her blackmail attempt. Maybe Sabrina had orchestrated the entire fiasco, setting Derek up for a fall, while reaping her own profit. It was a terrifying thought, but it made sense given her abrupt disappearance and hush-money demands. Amanda, can you put me in touch with Kyle directly? Catherine asked. Of course. I'll text you his number. Minutes later, Catherine spoke to Kyle. He explained that Sabrina's father, Wei Chen, once competed with Derek for a major Chinese tech merger. Derek's success had apparently cost Wei Chen a fortune and tarnished his reputation back home. Kyle believed Sabrina sought revenge under the guise of forging a business relationship, planning to entangle Derek in legal trouble. She fed him tips that appeared legitimate, but in reality they were gleaned from corporate espionage or manipulated data. Then she let the SEC discover them. "I have documents showing Sabrina's father orchestrated the entire infiltration," Kyle said, "and also a recorded phone call where Sabrina brags about how easy it was to seduce Derek into compliance." Catherine felt anger and relief swirl together. If Kyle's evidence was real, it could vindicate Derek. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" He hesitated. "I only discovered it a few days ago, rummaging through old servers and unsubscribed email accounts. I used to manage some side projects with Derek, but we parted ways after a disagreement. I had no idea Sabrina's infiltration ran this deep. I thought I owed it to Derek to come clean now." "Thank you," Catherine said earnestly. "Please get those documents to Derek's lawyers. And also send a copy to me." Catherine returned to the city the very next day. Her father tried to persuade her otherwise, but she insisted. "If these documents can save Derek, I need to be there," she said. At Harrington Ventures, she found Derek hunched over a conference table, scattered with papers, eyes bloodshot. The board was in an uproar. The SEC investigation was intensifying. Media outlets were calling him the next Bernie Madoff. It was chaos. Catherine entered the room and placed her hand on Derek's shoulder. He flinched at first, then turned to see her. A mixture of surprise and relief flashed across his face. "Catherine, you're back." She nodded. "I have news. I spoke to Kyle Peterson." Derek frowned. "Kyle, I haven't seen him in ages." Quickly, Catherine explained what Kyle had told her. She saw Derek's eyes widen, a spark of hope igniting. "If he really has that evidence, we can prove Sabrina was the mastermind. This changes everything." "It does," Catherine agreed. "We need to move fast, though, before Sabrina disappears for good." Derek called an emergency meeting with Langley and the legal team. Kyle arrived with a briefcase full of documents and digital files. He walked them through each piece of evidence, showing how Sabrina had infiltrated Harrington Ventures, forged research reports, and leaked them to Derek under false pretenses. The final damning piece, a recorded phone call, where Sabrina gleefully admitted Derek is so hungry for power, he won't even question where the data comes from. By the time the SEC is done with him, he'll be ruined. Langley's eyes shone with triumph. "This is exactly what we need. With this, we can build a defense that Derek was the victim of fraud. He'll still face questions about his due diligence, but it's a significant shift in liability." Derek looked stunned, as if someone had handed him a life preserver, just as he was drowning. He turned to Catherine, voice thick. "I don't deserve you. I was so reckless. I should have known better." She placed a hand over his. "Let's just get through this." Armed with the new evidence, Derek's lawyers presented everything to the SEC. The response was immediate and dramatic. Francesca Morales grilled them for hours, verifying the documents, analyzing the authenticity of the recordings, and cross-checking them against Sabrina's earlier claims. 2 days later, the SEC issued a statement. They were redirecting the focus of the investigation toward Sabrina Chen and her associates. Derek remained under scrutiny for negligence, but the criminal angle for insider trading was all but dropped. The media pounced on the story of the scheming mistress, fueling a new wave of scandalous headlines. But for Derek, the worst legal nightmares seemed to recede. He wasn't out of the woods. Entirely civil penalties for failing to perform proper diligence could still be on the table, and Harrington Ventures' reputation was badly tarnished. Investors remained wary, but at least the threat of prison no longer loomed. Throughout the madness, Catherine stayed by Derek's side, though their personal relationship remained strained. She had forgiven him enough to fight for his exoneration, but the wound of his betrayal festered. One evening after a grueling day of damage control, they sat in the living room. Derek poured himself a stiff drink, offered Catherine sparkling water instead. They sipped in silence. "Thank you," he finally said, "for not walking away, for finding Kyle, for everything." She nodded. "I did it for our child, and maybe for the Derek I thought I knew." He winced at that. She continued, "Where do we go from here?" He drained his glass. "I can't pretend this didn't happen. I failed you. I was so blinded by ambition, I forgot the vows we made. And Sabrina." Catherine cut in gently. "Let's not talk about her anymore." She sighed. "I'm not sure what's next for us, but I do know that if we're going to move forward, we need honesty therapy and time." He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. "I'll do whatever it takes." In the weeks that followed, Derek officially stepped back from the CEO role of Harrington Ventures, appointing a trusted associate to steady the ship while he sorted out the final legal tangles. The board reluctantly agreed, seeing that Derek had become a lightning rod for controversy. Meanwhile, Catherine focused on her impending motherhood. She invited Derek to prenatal appointments, and he came. Their interactions remained cautious, but as they witnessed the ultrasound images and heard the baby's heartbeat, a profound sense of shared responsibility bound them. Then one crisp autumn morning, Catherine went into labor. Derek rushed her to the hospital, eyes wild with worry. Hours later, they welcomed a baby boy, whom they named Andrew Alexander Harrington. Andrew for Derek's late grandfather and Alexander for Catherine's father. Holding their newborn son, Catherine and Derek felt something shift. The swirling chaos of the past months faded, replaced by a fragile hope. They had survived betrayal scandal and near financial ruin, but life had given them this new beginning, a chance to change. Epilogue. Short conclusion. Within the novel. Over the next year, the SEC investigation wrapped up. Derek settled the negligence charge with a hefty fine and strict compliance measures. Harrington Ventures, though, rebounded under new leadership, and Derek devoted himself to philanthropic initiatives while quietly rebuilding trust among colleagues and loved ones. Sabrina Chen never resurfaced in the US, rumored to be hiding out in Hong Kong under her father's protection, though whispers of further legal action haunted her. For Catherine and Derek, the road to healing was long and winding. They attended counseling, learned to communicate more honestly, and above all focused on raising little Andrew in an environment of love and stability. Through tearful confessions and late-night heart-to-hearts, Catherine began to forgive, and Derek sought to become the man she deserved. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, life rarely is. But in the hush of their child's laughter and the quiet strength of renewed commitment, they found the seeds of something real, something worth preserving. And though the headlines had screamed betrayal and scandal, the final pages of their story were yet unwritten, carrying the possibility of redemption and a new kind of happiness. Life can twist and turn in the most unexpected ways. For Derek and Catherine Harrington, What began as a shocking betrayal escalated into a high-stakes legal drama threatening to tear their lives apart. Yet amidst scandal and heartbreak, they discovered a glimmer of resilience and a reminder that even when everything seems lost, hope can emerge from the shadows. In this story, we've witnessed secrets laid bare, ambitions tested, and a love that struggled to survive the storm. Ultimately, it is a testament to the power of truth and the choices we make in the wake of our deepest regrets. If you found yourself enthralled by the twists and turns of Derek and Catherine's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more captivating tales of ambition, betrayal, and redemption. Your support allows us to continue bringing such stories to life, and we can't wait to share the next chapter with you.